let me tell you about my friend Jonas. He's been working on a podcast for a really long time now called Stories and Sounds. He sent it to me recently to preview, and I was totally blown away. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Stories and Sounds. If you like songs, if you like the story behind songs, you're going to love it. But let's play the trailer for Stories and Sounds at the top of this episode and be looking out for a special appearance from Jonas on this podcast, Worktapes, real soon.
When we're gone, what will be left behind? Beside trust funds or coin collections, we live on through our stories, the legends and legacies that tell of our greatest successes, our wildest ideas, our biggest failures. And what better vehicle for a story than music? Our musical heritage holds many truths about our humanity, and perhaps even more mysteries.
I mean, my whole thing here is basically a theory. There's nothing here that I can prove or disprove.
Join me in my quest for answers as I explore untold stories.
Breathe a little bit of life back in a Dial song. That's my contribution to the band.
Go on unforeseen adventures.
We are getting in Unit 92.
My son Walker, this one's for you.
This is Will's handwriting.
Dive deep into conversations with some household names.
Hey, this is Amy Grant.
Hey everybody, it's Vince Gill.
Hello, this is Ben Folds.
And peer into dusty corners of the internet.
I am in full belief that Pink Floyd intentionally wrote their album, Dark Side of the Moon, to line up with The Wizard of Oz.
Hear from those whose hearts define what it means to be human.
That music, it don't discriminate. It's one of the things I know that bring people together.
If you put a smile on a kid's face, then you've done a day's work.
And those who knew the stakes of their calling.
My first thought was, this is 50 grand. This is worth 50 grand.
And they heard me sing, and they said, well, wait a minute. We're getting ready to do this Scooby-Doo thing. Get him.
Join the journey as I see how far my questions can get me. What is the power that music holds to do this kind of thing?
It's like a scientist, I don't really know why this works all the time, but every time I do it, it works.
But when we search for answers, we rarely find the ones we expect. And sometimes we realize that we don't need an answer at all. From Wise Company Productions, I'm Jonas Litton, and this is Stories and Sounds.
Stories and sounds. Oh, everywhere you turn, there's a dream in a making. Any step you take, there's a history waiting. Sing, where are you now? Oh, 'cause we're ready for your stories and sounds.
Available wherever you listen to your favorite sounds.
Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of a song, or the work tapes. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born.
Coming in, washing over this town.
Hey everyone, welcome to Worktapes. This is Brandon. I'm joined today by my friend Stu G.
Hi Brandon, good to be with you.
Hey Stu, thanks for coming. Thanks for doing this. I've been after you to do this for a long time, so I'm glad the schedule's lined up finally.
Yes, good. Yeah, I'm glad.
I haven't seen you in a while. Well, I saw you at Blonde Redhead.
Yes, my favorite show of the year so far.
Man, that was good.
Yeah.
I felt like it was kind of an extra treat to walk in because I came by myself and I got to stand with you, so that was nice.
Yeah, it was great. I was there with my son-in-law, and Blonde Redhead have been a favorite band of mine for 15 years or so. And for me, they're like a palate cleanser in terms of, music. And so, I unless you read the lyrics, I don't really know what they're singing about, but that doesn't bother me at all. It's a little bit like Radiohead, it's all about the melody, and like I just let the music wash over me. I love it. It's great traveling music, and
it is.
Yeah, it's really cool.
What's your favorite album?
Blonde Redhead's album?
Blonde.
I mean, I really love the latest one, Sit Down for Dinner. Yeah, I absolutely love it. And then I got into them around 23 and Misery is a Butterfly. Mm-hmm. So I like those records a lot too, those two. So Misery and 23 and Sit Down for Dinner.
So all of them.
Yeah.
You like all of them.
Yeah. I really do love Sit Down for Dinner.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The first single was blew me away.
Yeah.
I listened to it on repeat for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've until I discovered Hermanes Guitars this year, it was pretty much all I listened to.
Yeah.
Was Blonde Redhead.
I think 23 is my favorite.
Yeah.
I've told people often on this podcast that we should do a spinoff of just talking about records. Because I'll get on tangents with friends of mine that are on this podcast, and we just talk about our favorite, whatever record we're talking about.
Yes.
But this is not a plug for Blonde Redhead, but it kind of is. You should go listen if you haven't heard it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
For those of us that don't know who you are, maybe just give us a little background on who is Stu G. And
yeah. So Stu G, my full name is Stu Garrard. The band that I was in that people might know is a band called Delirious. And there was two Stus in that band, and that's why I was called Stu G.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I knew there were two Stus, but I guess I didn't connect the dots.
Yeah.
There.
So if anyone said Stu, we'd both be,
right,
yelling up. And anyway, that Stu G kind of fixed that problem, and it's kind of stuck. So that's who I am. Delirious was a band from the south coast of England, and we started our life in a youth worship event, so kind of in the Christian church, and but as we became professional and full time, we felt let's take our music out to the high street, in terms of we wanted to release singles and get it on the radio,
right? And
so we were kind of doing the same kind of stuff that we'd do on a Sunday night, but just kind of, just taking all our influences. So people like U2, and we were really into a band called the Manic Street Preachers, or at least I was, and Smashing Pumpkins, and we would kind of, take all our influences like that and, make our music. And and so we had this there was a question mark on the end of our name, because people would say, are you like a Christian band, or are you a rock band, or what are you? And, of course the answer was yes.
Yes.
Both things. And so we were writing songs for the church, and then we were putting some of these songs out on the radio, and we ended up having five top 20s in the UK. We had number 2 in Germany. We played Glastonbury Festival. We toured with Bon Jovi.
Unbelievable.
And Bryan Adams, and as well as doing our own tours, and over here in America, the kind of the songs that really took off were songs that kind of were more suited to the Christian market, and so which we love too, and we kind of toured here, and in our kind of like prime, if you like, I guess we spent half the year touring in America and the half in the rest of the world. And we were completely independent. We had our own record label, our own publishing, our own distribution company.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and at different steps along the way, we would just employ people to kind of run these things and build these things up, and we ended up like distributing a ton of artists from America into the rest of the world, because we were already working in like, I don't know, 95 territories or something, and so that's what we did. But the lead singer, his name was Martin Smith, and him and I were the guys that kind of like wrote most of the tunes and the songs, and were kind of the musical visionaries. But everyone had their role,
Right.
in the band, and it was just, for 17 years, it was just an amazing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a singer he is.
Yeah. Great singer.
His voice is, I feel like he's kind of second to none. Like he's got a very unique sound. It's his voice.
It is. And the other thing that with him is that he's a great front man. Mm-hmm. So, in the church world, like we call it worship leader. And, but he kind of like, I guess, if you look at Bono or Chris Martin, they're both great front men, and they can make a crowd sing.
Yeah.
And that's what a worship leader does, And so, and Martin's really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really great. And then as a songwriter, for me, his choice of melody and yeah, his melodies are amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I met you because we played a show together.
Yeah.
Like, man, that was a very long time ago. I don't remember what year it was.
Yeah.
But we played in Franklin.
Yeah.
I think you had recently moved here, right?
Yes. Yeah, we moved here in when the band finished. My wife and I and our children, we moved to Franklin, Tennessee, in 2010. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So
that
would have been
right.
soon after that.
Maybe, so
maybe
we
2011.
Yeah, because yeah, that's right. Because we had a kid the next year, so we would have played that show right around that time.
Yeah.
And somehow we stayed connected. I don't remember that part, but we probably were talking about pedals or guitars or something.
Yep.
And I remember we went to NAMM together. Do you remember
That's
that?
right.
We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
That was fun. NAMM's like a big gear show for all of you that don't know, for guitars and pedals and audio stuff.
Yeah. And so after Delirious finished, and we moved to America, I was kind of had a publishing deal here, and I was a founder of co-founder of a little collective that wrote songs called One Sonic Society. So was doing that for a few years, and then getting out and playing with different people, and writing songs for different people. So and playing live. So I now play live with Michael W. Smith, and have just a bunch of different things that I get involved in.
Right. What was it like going from Delirious shows to your own solo, smaller, arguably smaller I mean, you played a set with us, and it was like a bar. So,
they're more nerve-wracking for us.
Right. Because you guys played some shows that I was looking at that were like 1 million plus people.
We did. We played shows in India. We did 3 nights in India, and it was like 300,000 a night or something,
Unbelievable.
or 400,000 a night.
So you don't really have to think about who's watching, because it's just like, well, it doesn't matter.
It's a little bit like what. We've played some big festivals over here. There's a festival called Creation East.
Mm-hmm.
There was thousands of people there. I can't remember how many. And it kind of looks the same. Like it gets to a point where, or Glastonbury, for instance, where there was like 100,000 in the field. It's like, it gets to a point where you just can't see you can't see the horizon for people. So
you think it's more nerve-wracking, but you were willing to do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if you love music and you're a performer, you're gonna, no matter how embarrassing it is, like if you're at a dinner party and there's a guitar there and someone says, "Oh, play something," I'd play something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm not like the best singer in the world, but I'll give it a go.
I think you're great.
Oh, that's very kind.
I do.
Thanks.
I think your voice is very cool.
It's kind of British.
It's British. Yeah, that's okay. We like British voices here.
Okay, good.
So for some of you that are like, well, who's Delirious? If you're not in the Christian music world, or even if you kind of were, vaguely, maybe we could just I'm going to note a couple of the big songs.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
I Could Sing of Your Love Forever.
Yep.
Was giant.
Mm-hmm.
Did You Feel the Mountains Tremble?
Yeah.
Majesty.
Yep.
The Happy Song.
Mm-hmm.
Deeper. Why did you laugh? My Glorious.
Yeah.
Those are just a few that I remember leading worship in our youth band.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that I played My Glorious, Did You Feel the Mountains Tremble? I Could Sing of Your Love.
Yeah.
And the Happy Song.
Yeah. The reason I laugh at that is because, the Happy Song was kind of like, I mean, it was kind of humorous. Even when we Martin wrote that song, but it was kind of humorous, it's kind of like almost hillbilly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I laugh.
It's definitely like a little departure, right?
Yeah. You don't really know what's going to catch on and what isn't,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And to that point, I feel like, and you could tell me if I'm wrong here, that Delirious records for that time in like CCM world, probably musically, I would say, was it controversial or was it well taken?
Well,
depending on the song, I guess, but like records overall, they're different sounds.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's kind of like, I would think like U2's pop album, stuff like that. Like it's a little off center from normal radio.
Yeah. Yeah. That's because we were never signed to a label.
So you could do what you wanted.
Yeah. So we did whatever we wanted. And people wanted it because of our songs and that we were popular and stuff like that, songs that people would be singing in churches or whatever. But then we'd come out with a song like the other day you mentioned It's Okay, or
that's my favorite one.
Our record Mesomorphosis was a little bit of a shock to everyone after songs like History Maker and What a Friend I Found off King of Fools. So there's a lot of people who King of Fools is our favorite record, but there's a lot of musicians that are like Mesomorphosis is our favorite record. So we were just doing whatever we wanted, musically and lyrically. I remember in It's Okay, we were singing about a situation that happened in like a Denny's or something. We were or a Waffle House, something like that. We were on tour. We had Martin and I were there, and this guy came over and he said, I'm a youth pastor, and I've got a girl here who tried to take her life 2 weeks ago, and would it be okay to introduce you? And we said, yeah. And, we had a conversation with this girl, but it was like the life was kind of drained from her face. She was obviously still very traumatized or depressed or something. And so we wrote this lyric, and it was, she's as pretty as hell, and her eyes have no home. The beauty has run from her face. It got, but along with that, and another lyric that said, hello friend, it's been some time since I sat at your table and drank your wine. And it's obviously
the envelope.
It's obviously referencing communion, but for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it was family bookstores or Lifeway or whatever, but they took the record off the shelves because of those two lyrics.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're really controversial, you know.
Well, you know, that, and arguably that is my favorite. I told you yesterday, that's my favorite Delirious song. And I've thought for a long time about covering it. Right. Maybe I will. I know there's other covers out there, but
no, it's good.
I think it's, and you co-wrote on that, right? Or did you write that?
I co-wrote that with Martin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I just think
I think it's one of those ones where like I wrote the bridge or something, like it was musical,
right?
Some of the musical stuff. Yeah.
I just think it's a brilliant song. Like it's heavy, but like the Pretty as Hell line makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Even in a Christian reference, like you're saying her face looks dead.
Yeah.
Like she's no life in her.
Yeah.
And that's hell.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And anyway, that's not the song we're talking about, but it's worth talking about. It's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great record. And we had a song called Deeper in the, it was on King of Fools originally. And we re-recorded it for the American version of Mesomorphosis because we licensed through EMI and they wanted us to kind of work with Virgin Records on like maybe putting a single out. So we kind of, and they wanted to do Deeper. And so we kind of re-recorded it and put it on the, made the version for American radio. And it kind of, it didn't really like go as well as everyone hoped, but that was a fun little moment, you know, meeting becoming friends with the head of Virgin Records in America, and staying at his house, and you know, and what have you. But
bona fide rock stars.
But that's the record that a lot of people talk about.
Absolutely, I love that record. I think. I mean, like I said, it's got my favorite song on it, so it's got to be my favorite record. You told me I'm going to mention this because I'm a nerd, but you told me a while ago you guys played with one of my favorite bands, Muse.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so I'm just mentioning that because I love Muse. I always have.
Yeah, me too.
And this would have been like probably Absolution record.
It was their first record.
Oh, it was Showbiz.
So I don't even know the name of it.
Showbiz. I'm a nerd.
They had it was in 2000, I believe, and we had just released Mesomorphosis in 99 or so, and we played a show in New York, and Muse were playing, and a band called Feeder.
Okay.
From the UK, so. A little bit of a British invasion, but
they opened for you guys.
Well,
is that right, or was it like a festival kind of thing?
They did open, and we did play after. Now, whether that's officially they opened for us or not, I don't know. But I remember the our lighting guy, coming to get me off the bus and said, "Stu, you have to come and watch this."
Yeah,
and they were just phenomenal.
And you got stuck gear with them. Like his stuff? Because his gear, Matt Bellamy's gear is wild. And it probably was
wild. Yeah. I don't remember if he had that guitar with the, I think that's like the Manson.
That. Yeah, it was probably before his Manson stuff.
Yeah, he was doing a bunch of stuff with like the whammy and, you know, kind of stuff like that. But it's interesting when you see someone without all the bells and whistles, and that it's still captivating, and still like blows you away, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm. And then once somebody like that gets money to burn on whatever they want, it gets nuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was kind of a nerd out, because I think I picked you up for drinks or something, and I was playing Muse. And you were like, "Oh, we played with them."
Yeah.
I was like, "No, you didn't."
That's true. We did. Once.
That's fine. That's enough.
They left us behind after that.
Yeah, that's enough. That's great. So we are here to talk about a song called Solid Rock.
Yes.
Solid Rock's a song that was on a record called The Mission Bell that you guys did in 2005.
Right.
And I really love this song. Part of the reason I love this song is because lyrically it's a simple song.
Yeah.
It's not hard to figure out what it's about. I love that in worship music.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in it that's like, I need to think about if this lines up with scripture or not, kind of thing. You know, like it's not too, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's just not hard to figure out.
Yeah.
I can sing it and trust it and know it's good.
Yeah.
So, where did this song come from for you guys?
So I can't remember if it came out of a conversation, but probably Martin and I, we would always try and sort of think of ways of coming up with like a new take on old hymn topics.
Right.
So, for instance, Majesty, the song Majesty was, it was kind of like a rethinking about just as I am without one plea. So the idea of like empty-handed but alive in your hands, you know, the idea of just, you know, just as I am without one plea, the old, I think that was a Fanny Crosby song or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so we were obviously knew about the hymn On Christ the Solid Rock Will Stand, and we had a conversation around, you know, what would it be like to reimagine that? And I'd kind of like just been coming up with different ideas. So we had this kind of basement area in our offices. We had like a record label, like I said before, and a publishing company and a distribution company, and we had a building or a couple of buildings in industrial units where there was offices and there was warehousing and there was like people shipping out product. Remember those days?
Yeah. Mechanical.
They've gone, you know.
I know.
But and in there we kept all our gear in there, and we didn't own a studio, but we did own gear. So like Martin was a sound engineer, Tim used to own a studio, and so we owned all our own recording gear. And I used to have a little setup down in our warehouse that was only separated from the rest of the world by like curtains or drapes. So it was very noisy, but you know, I'd get in there and shut myself off and come up with riffs and come up with ideas,
right?
And sounds and what have you. And so I'd kind of like come up with this. Can I play it on something?
Sure. I can't promise it'll be tuned, but yeah, grab whatever you want. That's pretty good. Pretty good for hanging around for a while.
I'd kind of come up with this riff. And I sort of was messing around on I've got an old Dobro. It's like 1937, and same age as my mum actually. And it kind of sounded cool, you know, just. And I was like, what would that be like if I kind of looped it and put a beat behind it? And so that's what I did, and then came up with. Like the idea, like a musical form for a verse, and then a musical form for a chorus. So I was thinking about, like, obviously that's not really got any thirds in it, so it's kind of like minor, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like messing around, you know, in a minor key, and then. You know, for the chorus, I thought, you know, let's lift it into like a major thing, and so yeah, just kind of. Just like playing the same chords but all major,
right?
And all over the E. E was gonna kind of like rooting the whole thing down all the time. And like my work tapes at the time, now, like I'd just literally, do a voice memo on my phone and be doing it on an acoustic guitar like that. But at the time, it's like I was sitting there, I had my amps there, I had, a little computer set up, and there wasn't such a thing as voice memos. Like we were using mini disc recorders and stuff that. So it was just a little bit more of a hassle. So it's like, might as well just throw a mic up and put it into Pro Tools,
Yeah.
And so anyway, so this is the original. This really is the original first work tape that I made of the idea for Solid Rock. I had an old blue telly that all these guitars are, I think.
So that main riff is just your dobro.
Yeah, I just looped that. Drums sound pretty good in these cans. It's just a plug-in on Pro Tools.
We should also mention this work tape is 20 years old.
Yeah, 2004. The reason I know that is because it was in my iTunes library.
That's awesome.
I'm a big fuzz. I absolutely love fuzz.
Same.
There's some, in terms of the chords there, all being over that E, there's a little influence from Tom Sawyer there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from Rush, yeah. Anyway, so
you would have taken this and given it to Martin.
Yeah, so like I used to kind of put something together like that, and I would let it go twice through a verse and a chorus sequence, and we would talk about it, and we'd kind of come up with this idea of maybe we can like reimagine On Christ the Solid Rock Will Stand, and then he would like, so the way we used to write was we would kind of gather all our kind of little bits of inspiration, we'd write them down or, record them on our mini discs or whatever it was at the time. And we'd do that throughout the year. And then come sort of like October, November, we would start to sort of formulate those ideas or those concepts. And that's when I would sit down in the warehouse and, make my little demos, and Martin would be doing that at home as well. And we'd send each other these MP3s and or swap mini discs or whatever we did.
Right.
And then he would say, "Oh, Stu, I've got like a melody and an idea for that," and then send them back. So and that's how we would kind of like formulate the ideas for the songs. And then come sort of the end of the year, December time and January, we would get together and then like work on them together and then present them to the other guys. And in February, we'd kind of like try and get in a studio. And
so a whole process to get to the end of a full song.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen to the full work tape real quick.
And first thing I noticed is that somehow in between me sending it to Martin and Martin sending it back, left and right is switched.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So he's put a a synth bass on there as well. That wasn't on the one that I sent in.
Oh, that's right.
There's a wave that's coming in, washing over this town. It will make or break us, reinvent us. It's time to lay me down. On Christ the solid rock we will stand. All other ground is sinking sand. On Christ the solid rock we will stand. We'll climb on your back to reach the higher.
Double the vocals.
Yeah, he doubled them. Yeah, I just. So obviously, the demo is just kind of like playing again. Yeah, it's just kind of like going round. Yeah, you can stop that now, but because the lyric is the same, because it was just an idea, right? It just had a first verse idea, and but you can tell that's my original demo because when he's going. When that's kind of like a little turnaround, but I'd already started the verse.
Right. Oh yeah.
So,
well, I like
so
that because it's not. I guess my question is, the way that you started the work tape, you guys already have production in mind.
That is true. Yes, that is true. Which is very different to what I then discovered kind of coming here. But yeah, when we used to write, we have a sound, right? So, or we had a sound. And so we were always writing with that in mind, and you can hear in even Martin's putting the double track voice on and those guitars being so huge, we were kind of imagining arenas and stadiums full of people singing it already, and so, and that's not like really, that's not being obnoxious. Like we were playing those kind of venues, back then. So, festivals and what have you, and, wanted to kind of capture this bigness of big groups of people singing. And so, and I think that's something that Martin does really, really well.
Right.
With the, with his melodies there and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of simple. Like the song is simple, musically all over that E riff, like that E riff's going all the way through. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
It's very fun. And how long between, let's say you've got your riff idea.
Yeah.
That you send it to Martin, like for this one, I'm sure they're all different.
Yeah.
How long in between, like how long does it take him to pen lyrics? Did you guys do that together?
No, well, that initial lyric idea there, which is pretty much the first verse actually, like as it ended up. But he would kind of like do that himself, come up with the idea, because we were kind of like working away in separate spaces and touring at the same time.
Okay.
So it was kind of a different situation than what it is today. Nowadays, if someone sends me a track and I'm to play guitar on and I'm away on tour, I can actually take a rig and go and record on tour. Like back then, like to take a rig with you was a little bit of a, it wasn't as easy.
Right.
So, so we wouldn't be writing on the road. We'd be gathering ideas. And, I remember, if you're familiar with a song called Rain Down or a song called Miracle Maker, like Martin and I wrote the bones of those songs during sound checks while we were on the road. But we had to just kind of remember them rather than like record them. So
yes, I remember having to remember songs, which is like I'm kind of mystified by the fact that I remembered them.
Yeah,
back then.
No, that's right. So yeah, so we would be, you know, like sending little bits and pieces to each other from our, you know, from our different homes, or with me in the warehouse and him at home or whatever. And then we would, you know, get the bones of an idea like that with the first verse and the chorus. And then come January, we'd get together, and, you know, that's when I would sort of like jump in on the lyric process as, you know, he would want me to. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so you kind of mentioned this a little bit already, but this song is basically a riff on that old hymn.
Yeah.
From the 1800s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm just looking on my computer here, which on the final record, the final recording, we had Toby Mac as a guest.
Right.
From DC Talk, and he kind of rapped the original lyrics over the bridge. So yeah, so we've got like the whole original lyrics, which are, you know, out of copyright.
Right.
Because
public domain.
Public domain, yeah.
So you didn't have to worry about that.
No,
that's good.
That's right, yeah. But, you know, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. And so he, you know, he kind of like rapped those over us being a rock band underneath, which is kind of fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a wildly popular hymn, and it has been forever.
Yeah.
It was written by Edward Mote.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And his story is interesting too. I've wanted to do an episode on hymns for a long time.
Okay.
I just got to find the people to talk to about it who know more than I do.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know a couple.
Yeah. You're probably one of them. I mean, that would be cool to get some minds together that know hymns really well and just talk about what they are. Like, one of my questions on hymns, which I could just ask you, would be like, do you think hymns were better songs than modern worship songs are now?
I don't know about better, but they were ways, they were like devices to help people remember the sermons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and the teachings and the scriptures, right? Because it's easier to remember a melody than it is a spoken word. So so, you know, the famous example is Charles Wesley would write what John Wesley was preaching on.
Right.
You know, and
a lot of churches still kind of adhere to that kind of liturgy where it's like the sermon is about this and all of the hymns follow this.
Yeah. So I think that one thing that is, you know, I haven't got a beef about anything, but I feel like the hymns from, you know, 100, 200 years ago were probably a little more theological than perhaps some more modern worship songs, which are a little bit more based on feelings, you know, and experience.
Right.
And I'm not poo-pooing that, you know, because I've written my fair share. But
well, that would have been my next question, honestly. Is like modern worship is evoking more feelings than truth. That would be a real simple way to put it, like biblical truth, I mean.
Right.
And I think there's an argument for it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it does, like the truth versions don't exist, but they definitely do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's great. I like the idea of taking an old hymn and making something new of it while being true to it, which I think this song does really well.
Yeah.
Especially with I watched when I was prepping for this episode, I watched your last Delirious show.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this was the second song in the set. And I just remember that because that's what we're talking about. And I don't want to get in trouble, but I really like Martin's delivery of what Toby did on the record better. Because it's some kind of more melody to it.
Yeah,
live.
No, that's right.
And he's giving, like, almost paying homage to the hymn.
Yeah.
And doing it.
Did he have a like a bullhorn when he was doing that?
Yeah, a bullhorn.
Yeah.
And it's very cool, but it's just like, Oh, okay. I see what this whole song is. It's
Yeah.
great. It's fantastic. So yeah, thanks for sharing the work tape.
Yeah, of course.
It's really cool to hear. I'm always fascinated to hear where songs came from.
Yeah.
Like in their most, like how soon would you have recorded that idea after you had it? Was it like instant, or you just sit with it for a little bit?
I would have recorded it really soon after I came up with that riff.
Okay.
So, that might have even been the same day.
Yeah.
And then, getting it off to Martin, or like working out the chords, and sending it the next day. It would have been really quick. And then, I didn't answer your question before, but, it would have been like several weeks probably before that came back to me with his vocal on it, because, or several days at least, because, we were touring as well.
Oh, okay.
In between times.
Yeah.
So we never did those kind of like 3-month long tours. We would do, we tried to keep everything to 10 days, or less. And so, but it just meant that we were away more often.
Right.
But it meant that we were home more often.
Right.
So.
Split it up. Y'all had families.
Yeah, exactly.
You had to do what you had to do.
Yeah.
That's great and commendable, actually.
Yeah.
I also want to mention, since you're here and we're both gear nerds, that you have, in the years after you and I connected, you got with JHS and pretty much developed a pedal with them.
Yeah.
Called the Kilt.
Yeah, that's right. So when, we've mentioned the record Mesomorphos. So just before we recorded Mesomorphos, Martin and I were on a walk somewhere in America. I can't remember where. And walked past a music shop. We went in, we played a few guitars, and these little round pedals caught my eye, and they were called Expandoras, and famously used by Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, I can't remember his name. He used to be married to Gwen Stefani. His band.
Gwen Stefani?
Yeah.
Oh, Bush. Gavin.
Yeah, that's it.
I forget his last name.
Yeah, Bush. Yeah, they used them as well. And anyway, I kind of liked it. Like, we'd just started to hear about the phrase like transparent overdrive, and what I liked about the Expandoras was that there was nothing transparent about it. It was like you step on it and it's distortion or overdrive or or fuzz. And so I loved it, and I we ended up with like 4 in the end, like after a couple of years, because like Martin would use them and I used them, and loved it. Anyway, that became the guitar sound of the along with like I used to use a full drive from Full Tone, and so that and the Expandora combined kind of became the sound of Mesomorphos. And so years later, once we moved to America, Josh from JHS reached out, said, should we collaborate on something?
Yeah.
And I said, is anyone making the Expandora now? And he was like, no, Big Sonic don't exist anymore, and and what have you. And that's how it all came about. He did all the R&D, and because it's quite a complicated little pedal.
Yeah. I think the Expandora was my 3rd pedal ever that I.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they made 2 versions, didn't they?
They did.
So maybe mine was the 2nd, but I remember it had like a secret setting.
Yeah.
That I found that had a ton of breakup, like it was dying.
Yes.
And it was my favorite sound.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like the dying battery thing that everybody knows now, but
that's right.
Back then, I didn't hear on anything.
No,
and I was just mesmerized.
It became known as the forbidden setting, because in their blurb, you had like both switches off, or these little dip switches, or one switch on, or the second switch on, but you never saw both switches on.
Yeah,
and that was the thing.
Yeah. It's cool. And the Kilt is like basically a version of the Expandora.
Yeah, it is a version of that with like brought up to date a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm sure working with Josh was great. He's
really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's a super guy.
He's he's a real pedal genius, electronics guy, and what he does and his passion for it like blows me away.
And he's so nice.
Yeah.
I reached out to him. Well, so for those of you that don't know, I used to have a company where I sold pedals. I sold several to Stu over the years, and then but one thing that I did is I would work with all kinds of pedal companies on various things other than just sales.
Yeah.
So I worked with Josh at JHS on some things that he hired me out to do. And then years later, I called him or emailed him because he's a really good photographer.
Yeah.
And I saw an image he took, and he let me license it for a song that I released.
Yeah.
So one of my covers is a Josh Scott cover.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's
Amazing.
a great picture. So he's just a super good guy.
Yeah. He's a
so
great guy.
fun. Do you have is that like your all-time favorite pedal, Ex-Bangora?
I mean,
you're a fuzz guy.
It's become the one that like I'm associated with the most. I really like. I mean, I was into Z-Vex pedals a lot when we would like after Mesomorphosis, and I was getting a lot more inspired by Smashing Pumpkins and Billy Gibbon. Sorry.
Billy Corgan.
Yes, Billy Gibbon.
That's funny. Billy Gibbons and the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah. Billy Corgan. And so I was working. We were working with a producer who was from Minneapolis or had spent time there. He'd spent time engineering for Prince and stuff like that. But he knew Zachary Vex, and he had come up with the original design. This guy Chuck Zwicky, who we were working with, had kind of come up with the original design for the Woolly Mammoth pedal.
Oh yeah.
And that was great. And then he introduced us to the Octane, and then to the Fuzz Probe, and then to the Fuzz Factory. And the Fuzz Factory and the Fuzz Probe became real, like, solid parts of my rig for a long time.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had a favorite pedal, it would probably be a delay pedal.
Yeah.
You know, I love delay and echo, and all through Delirious, I never had a reverb pedal. I did everything with I did everything with delays, and
yeah, because you can line up the time to where it just sounds like a reverb if you wanted to.
Yeah,
right?
You kind of can. I would have like low volume on the repeats sometimes, but really long repeats. You know,
Right.
really like the feedback would be high, and then it would kind of like. That was my ambient kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so probably the Line 6 DL4 is one of my, because that was the first delay pedal that I really got into that had, different presets and, lots of different movable.
Is that the green one?
The green one,
Yeah.
yeah. So there was that. And then I had Memory Man, and I had like different tape delays, stuff like that. But when Eventide came out with the Time Factor, I fell in love with that. So, I would say probably that delay pedals are my favorite pedal of all time.
Is that mainly because they're practical for your use? Do you like any of like the weird stuff that you don't really put into like you're not going to probably use a rainbow machine with Michael Libby Smith or somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, no, I don't use a rainbow machine with Smitty, but, there's a few things that I use, like, Chase Bliss make a pedal called the Mood.
Mm-hmm.
And, I use that, like, which can be incredibly glitchy and really fun and random. But I just use the micro looper to like create a pad, and then like a G pad on like Agnus Day or something like that, and then play over the top. So I'm kind of taking all my tricks that I've learned over the years that perhaps would be a little bit more kind of out there, but kind of bringing them into
right.
Different parameters and
making
fun. Them sound good. But
I love that.
like whammy type stuff and all that sort of stuff I still use.
Oh, those digi whammies are the Digitech ones. I love those so much.
Yeah. You know, people, if I break my pedal board down, show people I do walkthrough, and I've got like 4 ways of making fuzz on my board. They're like, how do you do that in a worship service? And I say, well, why not? You know?
Yeah.
Why not?
God made sounds.
People would never know, like, because you know, I one of my fuzzes, like, I love what Chris Benson does. Like, I've got one of his amps, and I've got the germanium fuzz, and it's just unbelievable. But I use it as a boost, actually. Like, it's got this impedance setting that you can kind of like wind it down like you're winding the volume pot down on your guitar. So it kind of cleans it up a little bit, but I use that as a boost. And so I'm using fuzz every time I do, you know, Placing This World solo or, you know, whatever, Secret Ambition or whatever it is.
You're slowly turning them into Smashing Pumpkins.
That's right. Yeah. I use it all the time.
What's your favorite Pumpkins record? I'm a huge fan too. So
okay. I actually really like, so I think my favorite of all time is Adore.
Okay.
And the reason is because when I said that we were working with Virgin Records, we were in LA. So Delirious was in LA, and Adore had just come out, and that was on Virgin Records, and they gave us access to their cupboard. And so, you know, I took a few records, and one of them was Adore, and it became a favorite because I would listen to it. I'd put it on my iPod, and it'd be one of the records that I would fall asleep to on a plane.
Oh, wow.
And so it would go in my subconscious, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But I also, I mean, obviously I like Siamese Dream and you know, Melancholy. I like those records, but I really like Machina.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd have to get versed on that one. I don't know if I've listened to it enough yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That was around 2000 or so, I think. A little bit after Adore. But yeah.
I would say mine is Gish, number 1.
Yeah.
And then I really love Pisces Iscariot. Is that how you say it? Pisces.
Okay.
You know that record?
No, I do not.
I'm going to find it and text it to you because
great.
It's insane.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I got introduced to Pumpkins when I was in the 6th grade.
Wow.
My brother would pick me up from school and have Gish on.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is this?
That's amazing.
What is that sound?
That's
His, well, both of their fuzz sounds, I mean, they're James Iha. Have you heard James Iha's record?
His first solo album.
Yeah.
I've got that.
Yeah.
On CD somewhere.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's in my car.
Yeah.
What a great album. Anyway, give me a little bit of the Beatitudes and what that's all about, because I think that's a really special project that you've done.
Yeah.
And the record is fantastic. I sent it to my mom. Was texting me today. Hey, Mom. I mention her every episode.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, but she was texting me today. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So I have a podcast. You should listen to these songs. And I sent her that one. And she just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I think we went out one time years before you did this project. You were talking to me about it.
Right.
And by the time it came out, I was like, that's what he was talking about. And it was like, I want to say 2, 3, 4 years later that you finished it. And I was like, wow, like what a commitment to do such a huge, ambitious project. So maybe tell us what it is, and then a little bit about like, how did your resolve even stay? I'm sure you ran into tons of hurdles on that project.
Yeah. Well, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know, the Beatitudes are they're these little announcements, these statements at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew's Gospel. So Jesus is talking to people on the hillside, and they're like the blessed are's, right? So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and so on. And so there's 8 themes in the Beatitudes, right? There's like poverty, grief, meekness, mercy, hunger and thirst for righteousness and justice, peacemaking, and persecution. And those 8 themes, I always thought, be great to make an album around those themes, and it'd be a great Delirious record. And I told, the other guys, I said, there's something in the Beatitudes that is like really appropriate for now, like peacemaking and showing mercy and, etc. And everyone thought it was a great idea, and we never got around to it. And so when the band finished, personally, it kind of threw my world upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And to anyone who wonders about like the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, like the kingdom of heaven is really kind of an upside down kingdom. So it's like, we think that success and blessing looks like having the most and selling the most records and having the most money and the best car and selling the most books and all that kind of stuff. But Jesus is saying, no, you're blessed if you're poor, or you're blessed if you're poor in spirit, or you're blessed if you've lost everything that's close to you,
Right.
So this idea of like maybe what the blessing is not like a fix out of your situations, but maybe it's like the presence of God in them. So, the blessing is presence. And that's the big idea of the Beatitues Project. So I began to have conversations with a bunch of friends around town in Nashville, actually. And, I was still thinking that it would just be a record or a collection of songs. And my friend Jimmy Abegg, he was such an inspiration. He'd be like, "Oh, this could be like an art project, or poetry, or," and it was just really inspiring. And around that time, I began to meet certain people who I thought perhaps embodied something of the Beatitudes. So there was a lady that I met through a therapist that I was going to see, and she had been on death row for almost 27 years. And so I was able to have a conversation with her about what does mercy look like to you, because she had her sentence commuted to life sentence with possibility of parole. And when I met her, she was out of prison. And so, we had a conversation. I was able to film that, and I was able to sit and talk with Amy Grant with her. And then Amy helped me write a song, and so the Beatitudes Project is a book, and it's a record of songs with like loads of guest singers. It's a film, like a documentary film, and it's art. Like Jimmy Abegg, who I mentioned before, did art with a guy called Corey Basil, and it's poetry, and it's kind of like for anyone that's interested in terms of personal study or group study. There's a study guide, and we made an e-course that's all up online that uses the film, and so it's kind of a very involved project, and it really is a passion project of mine.
Yeah.
And it's still very important to me, and I love to talk about it every chance I get.
Yeah, I love that record, the film parts of it, everything. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
The song in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
What it's called?
Meet Me in the Middle.
Meet Me in the Middle. That
Yeah.
song's very cool.
That's great.
It's totally rock and roll. And
No, that's amazing. That's like I sing that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
That's cool.
And I also love the one you did with Amanda Cook.
Undivided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two would be my favorite. And the
That's
Amy Grant
great.
song's fantastic too.
Thank you.
I love that whole project.
Thank you.
I'm glad you did that. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Let me give you one last question. You can go as long or as short as you want.
Okay.
Or you don't have to answer at all. It's your life, whatever you want to do. Over all of the years, I was going to ask you like a two-parter, which is why worship music instead of, anything else.
Yeah.
But the more important question, I think, is what do you think has, in our culture today, it's really popular to dump the faith.
Yeah.
Or dump the church, or tear it all down.
Yeah.
And do your own thing.
Yeah.
What has kept you grounded in your faith to be able to do this long? You've literally moved across the world. You're still doing it. You still have kept your faith. Your resolve is still, you're still passionate about God.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I mean, I would say that there is no faith without doubt. So, the idea of like coming with questions and like wrestling with, why do I believe this? Or is it just because that's what I've been told from when I was a kid? Or, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's all totally valid to me. So, I think there should be doubts and there should be questioning. The reason why I've stuck with it is, I feel a little bit like, where else would I go? I can't remember if it was the Apostle Peter that said that, but I do feel like that. I feel, looking back on my life, I've experienced so much of what I would call God's grace, mercy, forgiveness, moments, kind of extraordinary moments. And I can't explain it any other way than that it feels to me like God's hand's been on my life.
Yeah.
And so, through all the doubting and all the, kind of trying to come up with new ways of explaining old ideas or something, it's kind of, the reason I'm still in the faith is because God's been good to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of it, really.
That's a good answer. It's the only answer.
I'm trying to think of something clever to say.
I don't think there's any cleverness in the answer of, God's the one that keeps us.
Yeah.
He's been good, and that provokes our faithfulness, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, every day is not without its own wrestle or, this is, yesterday I was listening to a guy talk, and he was talking about the theme of stewardship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, the sort of opposite of stewardship is ownership. And he was saying how, in Psalm 24, it says that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And so if everything belongs to God in the first place, then our role is to be stewards of that. And I was thinking to myself, well, even within the music business over the years, you're kind of encouraged to own your stuff,
Right.
Like the whole thing is like, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to own a house, I'm going to own my own thing, I'm going to own my own business, I'm going to own this and that and this and that. And his question was, the idea of Jesus coming and saying, I only do what the will of the Father is. Or, he's teaching his disciples to pray, and he says, when you pray, say, your will be done on earth as in heaven, like your will, not my will.
Right.
And so this idea of, am I putting my will on the altar every day, if you like? Or, am I sacrificing my will? Like, am I trying to hold on to the things that I feel like I own? Or if God owns everything anyway, am I willing to put my will on, to sacrifice my will?
Yeah.
I can't remember where I was going with that, but that blew my mind. I'm still, so the point is that every day I'm thinking about something that I'm wrestling with.
Right.
And it's probably to do with, most of the time it's to do with pride or just wanting something, hold on to something yourself rather than trust God for it.
Yeah. Can we be content in where God has us in this moment because he's enough?
Yeah.
Not because, well, I'm with you every day. I've got, I could lay it right out, line by line. Here's what I want that I don't have.
Yeah.
And even those things are good.
Yeah.
It's good to want them.
Yeah.
But can I be satisfied in the Lord today? right now because he's sufficient. And it may not look like what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
But it does, it's like you said earlier, like, I think you said like mercy and grace may just be his presence.
Yes.
That's enough.
Yes. I believe it.
No matter where you are. You look at Paul was in, in prison and this is, how do you still maintain like a sense of joy when you're at the bottom? But that's kind of like, well, at least I found like when you're bottomed out, that's how God has got your attention now.
That's right.
And there's no going backwards from that.
No, that's right. And I think, there's no pretending that it's fun.
Right.
Or that it's joyful,
Right.
But the promise is that he's with us.
Right. Yeah. Which does produce some joy. Like there's a lot of, I got real heavy into Elizabeth Elliot for a couple of years, and she talks about that in several of her books, how, when she lost her husband, she kept being reminded of a verse in Isaiah where, though you're in the river, the waters will not overtake you. I will be with you. Mm. And that just like struck me every time I think and read about it or hear her old talks. And she mentions that, it's like, yeah, that's the promise. Not that it won't be hard. Mm. The Christian faith is the hardest, I would argue. And the promise that we have is that he's with us. The Lord is with us.
Yeah. And
there's who else better to be with us in those moments, in all moments.
That's right. So good chat.
We could go on another episode on that whole thing. But thanks for being here. I've taken up too much of your time already.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm super excited that you did this with us.
Thank you.
Where can people find you nowadays if they want to look you up?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram, and my name on there is @StuGio, STUGIO, and the Beatitudesproject.com. That kind of those two places. You can find me on everything, YouTube and Facebook and what have you, LinkedIn if you like, but Instagram is where I'm most active.
Cool. And go listen to some old Delirious records. That's right. Fun. I did it all day today.
That's great.
Then Jesus' blood and righteousness, I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. When darkness seems to veil his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil.